Mr. President, we are glad you joined us this morning because, as you know, there is a debate going on in the United States right now about the future of the American presence in Afghanistan. And General McChrystal on the ground there has said without more resources, the mission will likely result in failure. Do you agree that the mission is going to fail without additional American troops, and how many are enough?
I have seen General McChrystal's report. I'm fully behind him for what he's seeking in his report, if that's what we can call.
What about the additional U.S. troops? How many would be enough, in your view, to prevent failure?
I'm not a military expert, ma'am. This is a professional matter that professionals have to talk and come out with the result to us. What I'm concerned about is the protection of the Afghan people. What I'm concerned about is a successful implementation of our struggle against extremism and terrorism.
So you welcome additional American forces?
What I'm concerned, yes, ma'am.
If we could turn to the news of the election this morning, because the reports become more and more tumultuous to those of us back in the United States. We have heard that a member of the commission who supports you has now resigned, even though UN officials have said there is widespread fraud. That's a direct quote, widespread fraud in the election.
There were irregularities. There must have also been fraud committed, no doubt. But the election was good and fair and worthy of praise, not of scorn, which the election received from the international media. That makes me very unhappy. That rather makes me angry. And we must not turn an election of the Afghan people, a victory of the Afghan people, into a nightmare for the Afghan people.
But Mr.
I hope
Mr. President, we have heard from members of the UN Commission there that as many as 30% of the votes were fraudulent in some provinces. Isn't that reason to cast doubt on the entire election?
No, that was totally fabricated. That was rejected by Mr. Kai Eide, the special representative of the Secretary General, just 2 days ago in his interview to the press. That wasn't true. That was a politically instigated statement, unfortunately, that came out. The election, as I mentioned earlier, had difficulties. There were instances of fraud, no doubt. There were irregularities, but the election as a whole was good and free and democratic.
So just to be clear, the fact that Mr. Karzai has resigned from the commission, in your view, in no way casts doubt on the legitimacy of this commission. You still consider it a legitimate commission and will abide by it?
I'm not going to say that the Election Complaints Commission is illegitimate. The Election Complaints Commission is legitimate. It can continue its work, but that resignation has cast a serious doubt on the functioning of the Commission, and I hope the Commission, the Election Complaint Commission, to correct it and to be specific, should do everything now to remove those suspicions and to remove any other stigmas and to prove that it is impartial and fair and not dictated from outside by foreign elements or governments.
General McChrystal himself said the Afghan people do not trust the government to provide their essential needs. There is widespread corruption and abuse of power. Senator Feinstein said, how do you strengthen Karzai's spine if you can? The New York Times, Afghans have long grown weary of Mr. Karzai's weak leadership and his government's rampant corruption. What will you do differently? What is your promise to the Americans that you will do differently, given the widespread indictment of corruption in your government?
Matters of corruption are one issue. Legitimacy of the order that we have is a different issue. As you have debates in America, as you have problems in America, as you have issues of corruption in America, as you have issues of, capacity and on education, we have them too in Afghanistan, but on a much larger scale, because our country is underdeveloped and devastated by years of war and interference. Therefore, on Afghanistan, one would rather have a judgment that is based on the realities in Afghanistan, not as we see them from abroad.
But, Mr. President, these are people speaking specifically of you, and they're feeling that you have failed to gain control over corruption and are tolerating corruption because it's in your interest. Do you think that General McChrystal is wrong when he says that this is widespread?
The issue of corruption is a concern for the Afghan people and government, as it is a concern when it comes to other countries for governments there, for example, the United States. The issue of corruption is something that we are handling on an everyday basis.
But corruption in Afghanistan, you're comparing the United States to corruption in Afghanistan?
No. I'm talking of the existence of issues in governments and the way to handle them. Afghanistan has a set of problems, and we have to handle them as Afghanistan finds it feasible. 7 years ago, when we began together with the United States and the rest of the world, we had nothing in Afghanistan. This country was completely destroyed. No institutions, no government, no economy. Today, we are talking of an election in Afghanistan through procedures. Today, we are talking of better capacity in Afghanistan. Today, we are talking of fighting corruption in Afghanistan. Today, we are fighting of legal standards, of improved legal standards. That's how we see it. In other words, do you see the glass half filled or half empty is the question. I see it as half filled. Someone else sees it as half empty.
Mr. President, again, we're so grateful to you for joining us this morning. Thank you.
So good to talk to you, ma'am. Thank you.